If you're like me, you've probably dipped your toes into many different titles within the MMORPG genre, and just maybe you found that one game that scratched every single itch that you had desired, and perhaps you spent way too much time playing that one game where you asked yourself, what am I doing with my life? But every single MMORPG gamer has heard this one single question. Which MMORPG is the best? Now, there are plenty of titles on the market that you can dive into, and if I was going to cover all of them, then this video would be much longer than it actually is. But from the collection of MMORPG games that I have played within my lifetime, recently, I've dived in deeper into these two titles, World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2. To catch everyone up, I've been a Guild Wars 2 player since before the game launched by participating during the beta days of the game. And as for World of Warcraft, I actually just started playing the game in 2023. So today, I'll be putting both of these MMORPGs up against each other to answer the question of which title is worth your time. I'll also reveal in this video that I will be quitting one of these games. No! No! I enjoy playing both of these games, but I'm not 16 years old anymore, where I have little to no responsibilities. I'm now 27 years old. I have a full-time job. I'm in a relationship, and sometimes I just need to go outside and touch some grass. And MMORPGs take up a lot of time if you want to play them. And if I want to try and juggle two at the same time, it's almost impossible. So this means, although I like both games, I'm going to be quitting one of these MMORPGs. Now, that doesn't mean I'll never pick up this game again. It just means that if I'm ever in a mood to play an MMORPG, I'll have that one title that I'll focus on for the next several months. So now that that preamble is out of the way, which game should you play? Well, that depends on a couple of factors and variables. Let's start with a big topic that a majority of players will come across every single time they log into an MMORPG game. The combat system. WoW's combat system is a simple tab targeting system. Plenty of MMORPGs have a very similar combat system to WoW's. Simply lock onto enemies, cast your abilities within range, and make sure you don't take on too many enemies at once. Otherwise, it's GG for you. It's not the most exhilarating type of gameplay during your first couple hours when you start playing, but once you hit max level and dive deep into raids, Mythic Plus, and PvP, you'll be happy that you started learning the basics and slowly found out how to use each skill for your class. With the amount of skills the game dumps onto your skill bar, you'll probably be able to play piano after several long hours of playing World of Warcraft. WoW also allows for players to select what kind of role they want to play. Depending on the class that you choose, you can choose between being a big damage dealer, the tank that absorbs damage and keeps the attention of the boss, or the healer of the group that keeps everyone alive. However, some classes in the game are better suited for certain roles. For instance, you won't find a rogue healing a group of players. Speaking of classes, there are 12 different classes that you can pick from within World of Warcraft. Each class has different class specializations that you can pick from, which further differentiates your total playstyle. With a whopping 36 different class specializations to pick from within the game, you'll have many different variations of gameplay when you play World of Warcraft. Guild Wars 2 has an action style based combat system. This means that you can not only lock onto enemies and attack like in WoW, but you'll also have the opportunity to dodge out of the way from enemy attacks by using the dodge system. So if you are taking massive damage within an encounter in Guild Wars 2, you should start to ask yourself, can I actually dodge out of the way from the next enemy attack? Chances are, it's possible. The skill bar in Guild Wars 2 is much more simpler than World of Warcraft. It's split between your weapon skills on the left-hand side and your utility skills on the right-hand side. Skills 1 to 5 are based on the weapon you are currently wielding. So if you go from holding a giant greatsword and switch in the middle of combat to your longbow, your first 5 skills will become the skills associated to that of your longbow. Each class in the game, professions. They're called professions within Guild Wars 2. Each profession in the game uses weapons differently. So a thief that uses a short bow will have different skills compared to a ranger who uses a short bow. On the right hand side of your skill bar, you have your designated heal skill of your choosing, and the remaining 4 skills are those that you can pick from based on the profession that you chose. Speaking of professions, there are 9 to pick from in game, and each profession has 3 different elite specializations, which will grant you different skills and playstyles for your profession. And there are a total of 27 different elite specializations within the game. Each class also has the flexibility to play whatever kind of playstyle that they want. If you want to be an elementalist that tanks for the group, or if you are looking to heal the group as a thief, you'll have the freedom to change your character's build to do exactly that. Guild Wars 2 allows for any profession to fit any role of your choosing. For some players, getting used to a brand new combat system is totally easy after a couple of hours of gameplay. But what isn't something that you can change is your opinion on a game's art style. That is up to your own interpretation and opinion. Now, I'm not any art critic myself, but if I had to dive deeper into WoW's art style, I would say it would be that of stylized fantasy. You can of course find your typical forest area where wolves roam around. There are neat little cottage houses tucked away in the woods, but you can also find tall fortresses in the sky with dragon people walking around. The game doesn't go for the most realistic kind of approach. In this type of stylized fantasy, it allows for the game's graphics to age at a rate where they still hold up to this day. Character creation is good, but lacks the sliders that you can mess around with, meaning there are only a selection of faces, eyes, and more to pick from. You'll have plenty of different armor, weapons, and mounts to pick from within World of Warcraft. Some of them have different color variations, but you'll be unable to color or dye your armor or weapons within the game. Nevertheless, there are thousands of items in the game to collect in order to create a character that you are proud of. Guild Wars 2's art style can be summed up with one word, which I didn't actually know existed until today: painterly. It's as if the team at ArenaNet took the concept arts that their artists created and dropped it into their own game world. To my eyes, Guild Wars 2 looks a bit more realistic than World of Warcraft. Of course, there are elements in the game that are stylized within a fantasy world, just like WoW is, but the way ArenaNet adds characters like the Char or the Asuran golems into the game are so well done. You truly believe that these characters fit into the game's world and lore, and the customization for Guild Wars 2 is absolutely mind-blowing. Did you ever have a desire to roam around a game as Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars? Or perhaps you wanted to dress up as Gandalf from Lord of the Rings? Or maybe you feel like joining the Fire Nation and you want to run around as Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not only do you have so many sliders that you can mess around with while creating your own characters, but you can dye all the armor pieces that you find within the game, meaning you can let your imagination run wild with what kind of character you want to be within Guild Wars 2. Let's dive a bit deeper into what types of gameplay each MMORPG offers its players. WoW's PvE allows you to explore plenty of zones that have been added to the game for each expansion. Each zone allows you to complete quests from NPCs. Everyone knows how this goes. You talk to an NPC, they tell you to go buy milk from the grocery store. You go do that, you go return the milk to the NPC, and then you get some XP, maybe a reward. Very cool. If you are looking to run into the other faction and engage in combat while you are questing, you can flag yourself up for PvP and hunt down other players on the opposing faction. This type of playstyle adds a little fire underneath your seat because you never know when danger might be around the next corner. You can also queue for a standard match of PvP, or queue into the epic battlegrounds where 40 versus 40 players go against each other in a giant PvP match. What I found the most fun in World of Warcraft were the Mythic Plus dungeons and the raids. Mythic Plus are instance dungeons meant for a small group of gamers, and once you complete these dungeons and you obtain better gear, you can queue into higher Mythic Plus dungeons, meaning the difficulty continues to scale. well. Each time the game will add different gimmicks or new mechanics to challenge your team's skill. The raids in World of Warcraft are absolutely incredible. That is, those that are set at max level. If you choose to go through any of the old raids, you'll be able to basically one-shot all the enemies, which I guess is cool if you want to explore the old raids, but I'm not gonna lie, it kind of took away the momentum and the, I guess, hype for seeing the Lich King for the first time, and then I just kind of sneeze on him, achoo, and then he's dead. That's kind of lame. But the raids at max level, where it's only possible to beat the raid with a big coordinated group of players, that's where I found myself having the most fun in World of Warcraft. The encounters with the raid bosses are unique, each one having different skills and situations to be aware of. And if you find that this kind of content is still too easy for you, you can queue into the harder difficulty raids, where your skills are truly put to the test. For Guild Wars 2, you'll never find yourself having to go to an NPC. They tell you to go kill 8 wolves, you do so, you turn it in, you rinse and repeat. No. Instead, Guild Wars 2 allows you to openly explore each zone within the game, where you'll run into dynamic events that take place naturally. Typically, you'll find yourself wanting to explore a certain section of the map. Then you'll get occupied with an event where you have to defend a village or a shrine. At that point, you may find yourself following a group of players who are doing a larger event, and now, holy, a giant dragon has appeared and a group of 50 other players are there to help you take it down. Keep in mind, this kind of content is the open world content. This is normal defined just openly in the game within Guild Wars 2. Absolutely mind-blowing. For instance content, you do have the option to do dungeons, which are a blast to play while leveling, but afterwards, you'll find that a majority of them are easy to do at max level. Similar to Mythic Plus in WoW, fractals are instance content for a small group of players that scales in difficulty. If you're looking for more of a challenge with a bigger group of players, the raids in Guild Wars 2 are just as exciting as WoW's. There aren't as many raids in Guild Wars 2 compared to WoW, and that's because ArenaNet is focusing on adding strikes instead. Raids are fun and all, but a majority of players don't care for clearing out trash mobs, hiking a large area of the map to the bosses where you spend a majority of your time. Strikes are a way for you to queue up into bosses that you fight with a raid-sized group of players. If you are able to beat them easily, then why don't you give the challenge modes a try? Some of these challenge modes will truly test you and your team to your wits' end. Even I myself haven't beat a majority of the challenge mode strikes within Guild Wars 2, but I'm actually looking forward to giving them a try and ripping out my hair during the process. Lastly, for PvP, Guild Wars 2 does have instance PvP that you can queue into, but if you are looking for those large-scale battles where you fight over fortresses and 3 different servers face each other on an ongoing basis 24/7, some players might actually call this the Guild Wars within Guild Wars 2. World versus World is gonna tickle your fancy if you're looking for those large-scale battles where you're defending keeps, sneaking around hordes of players. World versus World is going to be your best friend if you're into that type of content. Now, some of us gamers have a history with these MMORPG games, and this is where a couple of the people might put on their nostalgia glasses because we have a history of growing up and playing these games back in the day. Before WoW released, there was a whole Warcraft series that people played, and even gamers who played WoW during its launch and the first 2 or 3 expansions, the game has changed drastically since then. And if you ever have the desire to play the old school version of WoW, you can dive back into that time period by logging into Classic WoW. This allows you to access the game in the state it was in when WoW was at its peak player count. Now granted, this is all sunshine and rainbows, but I'm not gonna lie, with WoW Classic and Retail WoW, it kind of splits the player base in half. When you meet someone who plays World of Warcraft, you have to ask them, do you play the old WoW or do you play the current version of WoW? It's fine and all, but it kind of splits up a community. Even if you look at a recent WoW video that I created, Some players are like, oh, this is cool and all, but play old school World of Warcraft. Some people grew up playing WoW and hold fond memories of meeting friends, creating guilds, and trying to become world's first at beating a new raid. That being said, you'll find some returning players often coming back to WoW to find out what has changed. Now, before there was Guild Wars 2, there was in fact a Guild Wars 1. Well, it wasn't called Guild Wars 1, it was just called Guild Wars. There are some players that still play that game, but the playstyle and the combat that Guild Wars 2 offers compared to the original Guild Wars is vastly different. You'll still find players who are into Guild Wars 2 choosing to log into the original Guild Wars, as ArenaNet has awarded players who accomplished achievements in Guild Wars with items that you can receive within Guild Wars 2. This is how I was able to obtain the fiery dragon sword within Guild Wars 2, which is a very popular and iconic weapon within the original Guild Wars. In my opinion, there's not a huge split in the player base because of the separate games. A majority of players play Guild Wars 2 since this is the game that the developers ArenaNet are still creating new content on. Everyone enjoys the game, but they don't want to be hopping into a game that's a dead game. And that all relies on what's in the future. Well, that is subject to change whenever you're watching this video. So for the time being, I'm going to cover what each game has on the horizon. For World of Warcraft, they recently released Dragonflight, which received a lot of praise and did many things right in the WoW community to fix issues with the game. Since then, Blizzard has been implementing content updates through quarterly patches. They've been adding new raids, dungeons, other PvE zones, and much more. Players expect that another expansion will be released either sometime next year in 2024 or the following year. But you'll be happy to know that during the periods where there isn't an expansion, there isn't a slowdown in new content being released. Guild Wars 2 is about to release their 4th expansion called Secrets of the Obscure. Once this expansion launches, they already have plans to release quarterly updates every 3 months to bring in brand new content and features into the game, such as being able to use new weapons for each profession, zones to explore, and much more. This is a new approach for the developers to take on, as Guild Wars 2 typically operated on waiting a long time for a big expansion that held tons of content for players to enjoy. Whether or not this new model will take off, it all depends after a full year's cycle of seeing all the quarterly patches come into the game. So until then, players don't know if this is going to be a good route or not. But in my opinion, the more type of content that gets added frequently is much better than waiting quite a long time. The very last variable of which game you should play all depends on what you have to pay to get into that game. For some people, it doesn't matter if there's a subscription. For others, they really hate microtransactions. So let's dive a bit deeper into what you have to pay in order to play each title. The first thing you'll have to give up is some time. And if you're a gamer, you probably enjoy MMORPG games, so you'll have no problem putting aside 1 or a couple hours a week into an MMORPG game. With World of Warcraft, you can only play until level 20. Afterwards, you'll have to pay for a monthly subscription in order to make your way to level 60. You'll be able to play previous expansions and access new classes, but if you want to explore the Dragonflight zones, you'll have to pay a box price for the newest expansion in order to reach the new level cap, access to the new Evoker class, and be able to dive into the new content that Blizzard is adding. If you want to access some of the shiny items or mounts within the game, World of Warcraft does have an in-game store where you can spend real-world money to acquire skins. Some players despise this aspect of WoW simply because they're already paying a subscription to play the game. Other players don't really care so much. For Guild Wars 2, you'll be able to log in, play the base game, and even reach max level completely for free. If you want to dive into any of the game's expansions that offer new zones, the ability to unlock and utilize the Revenant profession, and gain access to elite specializations that are in the game, then you can purchase any of the box expansions. There is no subscription for Guild Wars 2, so once you purchase an expansion, you can take your time playing your way through it through your lifetime. There is an in-game store that offers access to different skins in-game for armor, weapons, and mounts. Now comes down to answering the question, should you play World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2? And in my opinion, it's entirely based off of the variables that I listed within this video. So I can't really answer which game is worth playing, but what I can tell you is which title I'd like to continue playing and which title I'll be uninstalling for the time being. Playing an MMORPG takes up a lot of time, and if you try to juggle two at once, it's kind of difficult. Don't get me wrong, I have no problem jumping into an MMORPG, making a video about it, but if I want to try and play 2 or 3 MMORPGs at the same time, it's so stressful. I can't have a personal life with it, and I really can't enjoy that one MMORPG as much as the other one that I'm trying to juggle. So with that being said, I'm gonna quit one of these MMORPGs. I know, big sad, F in the chat already, but it's time for me to drop one of them. Out of both World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2, there is one game that stands out for respecting players' time, which is something I value a lot during this time period in my life. For WoW, I was able to create my character in February 2023. I hit max level within a month. I grinded out the gear that I was hoping to get, and then I was quite content. A few months later, when a new patch was added, I remember trying out the new content, and people within the community told me that it was time for me to farm new gear. I was stunned. This is never something I have to do within Guild Wars 2. I still use the same gear that I got years ago, and I can log out today and log back in 8 months later, and the gear that I have would still be okay. I find it super annoying that WoW has this gear grind. Once I started farming a new set of gear and get the first 2 pieces, sure, I was happy, but I was already content with the gear that fit my needs before the new content was released. Is this going to be the case every 6 months? If so, I'm not actually thrilled to gear grind every single time I log back into World of Warcraft when a new patch hits. Not only do I dislike the gear grind, but the combat system in WoW, I don't know guys, maybe this is a hot take, but I really enjoy the combat system for Guild Wars 2. Now don't get me wrong, if I wanted to create videos for views and I wanted to get more views, I would continue making World of Warcraft videos. Take a look at these 2 videos that I made on World of Warcraft, and take a look at any of my Guild Wars 2 content. It doesn't get anywhere close to that type of view count. Now I don't want to move forward and try and create content just because it gets more views. At the end of the day, I want to play an MMORPG that I'm enjoying. So for the time being, I'm gonna uninstall World of Warcraft. Now, does that mean I'll never explore Azeroth again? Absolutely not. I'm excited for whatever new expansion is on the horizon for World of Warcraft. And of course, I'll give it a shot then. But for the time being, ArenaNet really has my attention. So I'm looking forward to adventuring more within the world of Tyria. If you're looking to jump into Guild Wars 2 and you're looking for a guild, I got you covered. Feel free to join my Discord. I'd be happy to send you guys a guild invite. Make sure you let me know in the comment section down below which MMORPG you're playing. Maybe it's not World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2. Maybe you're playing another MMORPG that I didn't talk about in this video. Feel free to let me know. And thanks so much for watching. As always, stay hydrated, gamers.